صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله وعلى آل بيتك المظلومين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم and welcome back to another weekly conversation on the After Maghrib podcast. We are now approaching the end of the month of Safar, where many Muslims around the world are commemorating the wafat, or rather the istishhad of Rasool Allah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. If we take Rasool Allah as our final messenger, we need to discuss him, we need to discuss his life, we need to look into what happened towards his final moments throughout his lifetime and what made him Rasulullah. And inshallah, this is what we aim to do on this week's conversation. As always, I would like to welcome my esteemed, energetic, charismatic, I can't rhyme any more words here. Yeah, I was going to say charismatic. Charismatic, that's the one. As every week, Ahmed Abbas Gokul. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam, Sayyid. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, I'm well. How are you?
I know exactly what you're going to say.
I've waited about half an hour for you to arrive.
وَالْأَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. It happens. I apologize for my delay. I had a long experience at the petrol station. But a story for another day, inshallah.
I want to hear it.
Yeah, another day, inshallah. Otherwise, we'll keep going. I don't want to bore you.
Now, joining us in this week's conversation.
Yeah, one of the boys. It's been a long time coming since your last appearance, Mohamed Ali. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, rahmatullah.
Welcome back to the podcast, bro.
Alhamdulillah, bro. Where it all started, man.
Where it all started. And for those who don't know, Mohamed Ali, if you haven't tuned into Jum'ah nights, we've been working on this together. It's the most exciting thing right now on YouTube, and it's a blessing to be a part of it with you. And bro, you, mashallah, you are killing it week to week. But for anyone who doesn't know what Jum'ah nights is, and obviously it's part of the After Maghrib brand at large, but how would you describe what you do on Jum'ah nights?
So like Jum'ah Nights is just like a little podcast where we discuss like different topics every week, every religious, like a religious topic, and then we have a contemporary topic after.
Yeah.
We go through books, classical books most of the time, just trying to get people more acquainted with the books and have a discussion and a little conversation with our viewers with regards to different topics. So that's like the gist of Jum'ah Nights, and then the contemporary topic, we choose something different every week. And yeah, alhamdulillah, it's been going well. I've been glad, and I really appreciate all the support that I've been getting from the viewers and obviously from the team at After Maghrib.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been good, alhamdulillah. It's been good.
It's been cool, man, because when the idea behind the production of it is to engage like a niche of the community, like a young audience who know that there are so many sometimes conflicting sources within different texts. Sometimes there's things in text which we don't really understand, we want clarification on. But generally speaking, everything we believe in can be found in Shia books, and sometimes not even in Shia books, and in books of other sects, especially in Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah.
100%.
So it's cool. It's nice because we're able to talk about religious matters for a young audience without boring people to death. I hope.
I hope anyway as well.
Inshallah.
Well, you're doing good, man. Honestly.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, it's been cool.
Mashallah,
It's been cool.
mashallah.
If anyone hasn't heard Mohamed Ali's first After Maghrib podcast, it was on racism and the heritage of the Imams.
Racism and African Imams was the title.
Yes, racism. Yeah. That was about 40 episodes ago or something.
Mashallah.
SubhanAllah. And yeah, man.
It's been a long journey.
Been a journey. So Sayyid, where do we go from here?
It's a good question. And before we were actually starting the recording of the podcast, before you arrived early, Habibi, me and Mohamed Ali were actually discussing, sorry to repeat that. Me and Mohamed Ali were discussing, this idea, well, not the idea, the historic narrations that we come across, the calamity of Thursday.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important, place to start this conversation, because it's like a turning point for a lot of Muslims. And I know you have, some sort of detailed answer to this.
Yeah.
But from what I understand it, I've heard it from the pulpits and everything. But the fact to have you here, inshallah, I'm going to learn more, and whoever's listening and watching is going to understand this.
We'll all learn together, inshallah.
From what I've understood, the calamity of Thursday was at a time where Rasool Allah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was laying on the deathbed, if we can call it so. And he asked, for the companions that were there around him to bring him a pen and paper so that he can write for them something so that the ummah of Muhammad will never go astray. Some said the Prophet is delusional, a'udhu billah. Some said, he's not in the right state of mind. But what exactly happened?
Right, so we've actually brought Sahih al-Bukhari here today. So this, I've got a summarized version of it, right? So it's not the whole thing, yeah, but it's got the narration in there about it. And obviously it's something that all Muslims agree upon that it happened, right? We have the famous narration of Ibn Abbas, and he very clearly, he says that he called it this name, this Razit al-Khamis, the calamity of Thursday. He himself, he considered it to be a great calamity, that Rasulullah has asked for something and the people have refused to give it to him, or they've called him delirious, or they've said, he's not in his right state of mind. And you see that here in Bukhari, we've got the narration. Ibn Abbas, he mentions it, and Bukhari mentions it very clearly, that Ibn Abbas, he says, when the ailment of the Prophet became worse, he said, bring for me a paper, I'll write for you a statement, after which you will not go astray. But Umar, radiallahu anhu, as Bukhari says, the Prophet is seriously ill, and we have got Allah's book with us, and that is sufficient for us. But the companions of the Prophet differed about this, and there was a hue and cry. And on that, the Prophet said to them, go away and leave me alone. It is not right that you should quarrel in front of me.
Yeah. So he got upset from them.
Yeah.
The fact he said go away.
There's a lot of things here. One is that Ibn Abbas is like a unanimously and universally accepted narrator, and he has a track record of
he's not making things up,
pleasing both sides in it, in terms of the
100%.
Ummah. He spent time with Umar, and he was an advisor for him as well. And even though he was a lot younger, if I'm not mistaken, a lot younger, Umar even kind of turned to him for guidance. And at the same time, he had a relationship with the Ahlul Bayt and Muslim. And for this hadith is groundbreaking.
Yeah.
Like the fact that he's narrating it is a big deal, and the way I see it first and foremost. But someone might turn around, they'll be like, the Prophet saying, I'm going to write something so you don't go astray. We know what we're thinking, right? What could he be writing? And then if Umar replies saying, no, we have Kitab Allah already, we're good. So someone might just say, well, we know what the Prophet would have written. Is that like a fair assessment or like a fair assumption to make?
I think the thing here is that Rasulullah, it's clear that, obviously he's already said what he said at Ghadir. He's already said that I've left behind for you the Kitab and my Ahlul Bayt, right? Yeah. But he's said those things. Rasulullah wants to write it down.
Engrave it.
Engrave it. Show everybody and say, look, this is something I've written. And this is a big point, right? About him writing. You see, the other Muslims, what do they say? That Rasulullah couldn't write. But this is a big proof that Rasulullah is actually saying, bring me a pen and paper.
Ummi, right?
Yeah, he's Ummi, right? Yes. And obviously the Imams of Ahl Bayt, what they say, that Ummi refers to him being from Mecca, from al-Qura, right? And they say that this means illiteracy. But that's what's the most interesting part, that this is found in the narration, and it's a Sahih narration. It's in Bukhari, and Rasulullah is asking for a pen and paper to write. Yeah, so that's a big point, like on our part, when we say that Rasulullah could read and write. But more than that, when we're looking at this narration, look at the situation here, and let's look at it from a Quranic perspective as well. Right. Just really quickly, I don't want to go on a monologue.
No. Jum'ah night session.
Jum'ah night session. But if we take a look at this Quranically, you see a lot of aspects are covered in this, right? The first thing is, right, Omar says that the Quran, the book of Allah, is sufficient for us, right? And the Quran itself is saying that Rasulullah is there to explain the Quran, right? هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات, until the end of the ayah. And then he says that then no one knows the interpretation of it except Allah and those who he's given knowledge, right? So someone needs to explain this book, but he's gone against the Quran in that way. Then you have the fact that they've raised their voices and they've argued in the presence of Rasulullah, and he said, leave me. It's not right for you guys to quarrel in front of me. What do we see in the Quran? Surah Al-Hujurat. Allah saying, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tarfa'u aswatakum fawqa sawti an-nabi. O you who have believed, don't raise your voices above the voice of the Prophet, and don't shout and scream the way that you do with each other, lest all of your actions go to waste.
Wow, subhanallah.
You see that small action of, obviously it's not a small action, the Quran is saying by doing that, all of your actions are gone. right? All the good things that you've done, they don't mean anything anymore. So sometimes, you know, we have people from other schools of thought, they say to us, you know, this person, how can you Shia, you hate him? And, you know, he conquered, I don't know, he conquered Persia. He took Islam to the furthest out. And it's like, let's take a look at this from the Quran.
Yeah.
The Quran is saying through this action, all of your actions could be rendered null and void, as if you had never done anything good at all.
Yeah.
That's the second part. Then you have the fact that Rasulullah kicked them out.
Yeah.
That part is the bit that is like, it literally engraves it. Yeah,
the final nail in the coffin.
Exactly, the final nail in the coffin. Why? Because Anbiya never kick people out. Anbiya are there to bring mu'mineen together. They're not there to send them away. And you have that in the Quran, yeah? Nabi Nuh, he says very clearly, وَمَا أَنَا بِطَارِدٍ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, I will never kick out or send away people that believe. The akhlaq of the Anbiya is to never send believers away.
Yeah.
And then Allah, He even orders Rasulullah in the Quran that do not send away. وَلَا تَطْرُدُ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُم يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. Don't ever send people away that are calling upon Allah, seeking His face. They have sincerity in their hearts. If you were to do this, He's speaking to Rasulullah, you would be from the oppressors. Allah saying that to the Prophet. If you were to send them away, you would be from the oppressors. So this is a question you need to ask. When we read this narration, you ask the people that have this narration in their books. Yeah. Look at it in the Quran. Allah told Rasulullah, don't kick out the people that are sincere towards their love towards Allah. They're looking for Allah. They're sincere. Otherwise, you'd be from the oppressors.
Do you think maybe it's a symbolic thing? Like, there's a lot of instances in the life of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he did acts, like whether it's, for example, gathering his family under the kisa, under the cloak, whether it's, for example, Amir al-Mu'mineen sleeping in his bed. A lot of individual acts had a long-term symbolic status
till today.
And today. And then obviously the same argument is used for those who do not believe in the wala of Amir al-Mu'mineen. They'll say, for example, Abu Bakr led the salah in the absence of the Prophet, or at the point of the death of the Prophet. They'll say this is symbolic for the fact that he was chosen as the next leader, or he was the one who was the most qualified, arguably, to be the next. So if we live in that sort of world, or we live in this polemical system where short-term acts or like small things can be symbolic, we could argue that the decision of the Holy Prophet Muhammad to tell people to evacuate a room is more than just him being upset in the moment, putting it as, oh no, it's okay, he was upset, it was a momentary thing, you know, he had a great relationship with this companion. Surely that meant a lot more. Do you know what I mean?
Especially if Allah's told him not to.
Yeah.
Don't kick them out. Don't kick out people that are sincere.
Yeah, 100%.
So, of course, that has to be symbolic. Rasulullah is not going to act in defiance to the Quran and be called an oppressor by Allah.
Well, you know, it's very shocking. Yani, if we live here now today in 2023, we take Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as, you know, our ultimate guide.
Yeah.
Now, you are there besides the man. You are beside Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And to, you know, have that satanic thought of thinking Rasulullah is delusional, and then, you know, deny his request, and then, you know, for you know, say that, you know, the illness has overtaken him, and this is Rasulullah. Yeah, I know we as followers of the Ahlul Bayt, we fully believe Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the best of creation. That's the
Ma'soom.
Okay, and he's infallible. This is the point I come to.
And at the highest levels of ma'soom, right?
And on top of that, we believe, and so the other schools of the you know, Islam believe that Rasulullah, if he says something, that means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking.
100%.
Is that correct? So if you know this and you are there right beside Muhammad, why would you deny that request?
Bro, if you think about it, sorry to interrupt you, but you wouldn't even do that to your parents or your grandparents.
Well,
like, if you're, God forbid,
this is Muhammad Rasulullah.
If you're in the hospital, yeah, and God forbid your grandmother, grandfather, your mother, your father were on their deathbed in the hospital, and they said to me, for example, Ahmed, get me this, I want to make a note before I leave this world. I'm not going to say, no, you're delirious, you're too sick. What's the harm? Even if I think in my mind, maybe what they're going to write is not going to make sense. What's the problem? Get the paper. Give them the paper. Like, if I don't like
just respect.
it's just respect.
Merely,
and bro, the level of insult, the level, you're adding nothing but salt to a wound of someone who's already ill, someone who's already in that extreme pain.
Let alone that person being Rasulullah, bro.
Yeah, man. I can't get, and that's why it's called a calamity. It's not a dramatization of a small event, as some people have claimed it to be. Rather than that, it's a complete disregard of the status of Rasulullah. You know, for example, you can spend 25, 30 years with Rasulullah. At the last moment, at the point of death, if you don't make that, if you don't leave it on a good note, finished. For example, Sheikh Shamali made a really nice point when he talked about death. Said, I don't know if you heard it, I think you were at Istanbul that day. He said you could have a relationship with someone for like 10 years. Let's say you're a landlord, you have a tenant. He lives in your flat for 10 years. For 10 years, you're friends. He brings you cookies, you share dinner, whatever. Great relationship. On the day the guy moves out of the house, imagine he comes to you and he says, by the way, you're my landlord, but I hate your house. Your house stinks. There's mold everywhere. You think, bro, come on. I've had such a good... Why are you going to ruin it on the last day? Everything you've built goes down the drain. Because at the point of death, like specifically speaking, it's a defining moment. So you can throw away, like you said, all of your deeds are undone, rendered null and void.
That narration, that ayah of the Quran as well about, you know, raising your voices above the Prophet and, you know, and you losing all of your actions. Even in Bukhari, it mentions that it was revealed about the first and the second caliph, right? So that adds context. That's happened prior in Rasulullah's life, that they have done that already, and Allah has spoken against it in the Quran. And then again here, you have the same thing happening.
Yeah.
Right? And you know what's crazy as well, yeah? And I don't think people ask this question, right? Rasulullah's kicked them out, okay, but you never see that, you know, okay, you've been kicked out by Rasulullah. What's your immediate reaction?
Yeah, that's true. No objection, nothing.
What's your immediate reaction? Imagine you're a Muslim. You know, people say, you know, they weren't ma'soom, right? You know, maybe Omar, he wasn't ma'soom. You know, he could make an error. He could, you know, whatever.
Remorse.
But at that point, you get kicked out by Rasulullah. What are you doing? Right? It's me or you. We've been kicked out by Rasulullah.
Did he ever apologize?
You're going to run back. You're going to kiss the feet of Rasulullah. Please, Ya Rasulullah. I'm sorry.
Was there no apology, by the way?
No apology. There's not recorded in any history.
Akbar.
Not recorded in any history that anybody went back and they said, Ya Rasulullah, we're sorry, we apologize, please write for us.
I think we have this at this juncture. It's important to make a note that having conversations like this is purely for the sake of insight,
100%,
like education. Because we're not trying
100%.
to cuss anyone out, or we're not trying to
100%.
disregard anyone's belief.
100%.
But it's important for us to understand that the belief of what we have is there. It's part and parcel of our faith.
And by the way, the beauty of this narration is that it's unanimous.
Yes.
So it's not something that someone can say, you know, the fact we're discussing this was sectarian. No way, hell no.
Say, moving on from the calamity of Thursday, at the point of the death of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the world turned grey, because obviously Rahmatullah Alameen has left this world. The soul of the most beloved creation, Habib Allah, had left the world. It was the saddest moment up until that point in history, in human history, because in many ways you can say the one who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the dunya for had left this dunya. Do you know what I mean? At that point, there were two camps. There was the camp who were burying Rasulullah Muhammad, and there was the camp who were preparing for what's to come after in terms of preparation of leadership. Can you kind of give us an insight what happened and who was where?
Inshallah, I can give a basic insight I'm not that knowledgeable when it comes to this, but if I remember, and I've actually read this in a book somewhere, just can't remember the title, that before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you know, left this world, the angel of death came to visit him, and he seeked permission from Rasulullah to enter the house. I think we're staying at the house of Salama, if not mistaken, to enter the house to take the soul of Rasulullah. Rasulullah said no. And they say this was the first time that the angel of death asked for permission, and the last time he asked for permission for anyone to enter before to take your soul. And why? What did Rasulullah say? He said, go back to the heavens and call Jibreel. Do not take my soul until I have seen Jibreel for the last time and have been around my family for the last time. So Jibreel did come down. They had this conversation. So I don't know the detail in depth. But it was at that time where Fatima al-Zahra came in, salamullahi alayha, and she was beside her father. Amir al-Mu'mineen came in. He was beside his father-in-law, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And then Rasulullah will hear, you know, someone crying. And he would ask Amir al-Mu'mineen, who's crying? And he would say, this is Hassan and this is Hussein. You say bring them. And if I remember clearly, yeah, he requested from his daughter and from Imam Ali to leave the room. And he said, just bring them to me. And afterwards, Imam Ali would ask, what happened during those moments when you were with Rasulullah to his sons? And they will say, Rasulullah bring us closer to him. He would hug us and he would embrace us and he will place us, near his chest. And he will say, to his grandson Hassan, he will say, the Ummah will oppress you after I go. And Hussein, the same thing will happen to you. The Ummah will oppress you after I go. And they asked him, how? He said, Hassan, you by the poison, and Hussein, you by the source of injustice. And it was at that moment, he told the angel of death, now come and take my soul. And then Fatima Zahra came back and Imam Ali came back. All of this happened. But while this is happening, Imam Ali had the instruction to take over the burial, to take over the ghusl, to take over the shroud and everything. But at the same time, there was something happening in Islamic history. And then I think this is where it gets very, very interesting, yeah. Is that you had the family of Rasulullah taking care of the burial of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then you had another camp who were incorporating a brand new company called Saqifa and Co. And the co-founders were plotting against Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I don't want to give too much detail on this, but this is reality of Islamic history.
100%. And you know what? In fact, I discussed this very briefly in one of my episodes in Jummah nights. Sorry to shout out.
No, do shout out.
Sorry, bro. This is
where we need to refer to this episode.
Yeah, no. So I spoke about the aims of Imam al-Hussein in going to Karbala.
Yes.
And one of the biggest aims of Imam al-Hussein was exposing this plotting. Because there's a very famous narration that I mentioned and read from in Al-Kafi, where it mentions that there were a group of companions of the Prophet who gathered and they wrote and they planned to plot against Rasulullah and Ahlul Bayt.
This is while the burial was taking place, huh?
Yeah, this was even prior to that. They had planned even prior to that. And this was just, even when we spoke about Raziyat al-Khamis, that is a consequence of that. The fact that, Rasulullah told them to leave and all of them have left happily. Yeah, they've left knowing that we've stopped Rasulullah from writing what he needed to write. Yeah, because they've already planned for what they've plotted. And that's the interesting part, because you see all of the events, they all point towards one reality, right? And yeah, like when we look at plotting, you spoke about istishhad of Rasulullah. What did you mean by that? You said wafat of Rasulullah, rather we speak about the istishhad.
See, when we use wafat in Arabic, it means like when someone dies. But when we say istishhad, it means they were martyred, they were killed. Something led to that death. It wasn't just a random, death that happened. But do you have like an insight of exactly why we call it istishhad?
Yeah, so we have narrations in our books. So you mentioned Imam al-Hassan, for example, right? And you mentioned that Rasulullah said to him that you will be oppressed with the poison, right? We have narrations also from Imam al-Hassan himself. If I remember correctly, there's a narration in the book Al-Khara'ij wal-Jara'ih by Qutbuddin al-Rawandi, right? And this is one of our classical books. And Imam al-Hassan, he mentions...
I'm sorry, I don't know the book.
I gathered by the way that you said it. But Imam al-Hassan, he mentions in this hadith, he says that I will be killed by poison the same way that my grandfather was killed by poison.
Allahu Akbar.
Allahu Akbar, yeah.
Yeah, so this is interesting. Then you have narration from Imam al-Sadiq. It's mentioned in Tafsir al-Ayashi and in Tafsir al-Qumi. These are our most classical works of tafsir, right? And it's the ayah of the Quran where Allah says, وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ أَفَإِنْ مَاتَ أَوْ قُتِلْ انقلبتم على أعقابكم. He says, and Muhammad is not but a messenger. Before him many messengers have passed. So if he was to die or be killed. Yeah. Now Imam Sadiq, what does he say? What does Imam Sadiq say? He says the "O" there is confirmation from Allah. He's not saying killed or martyred. He's saying killed rather martyred. Right? So he's saying, so for example, in the ayat of the Quran, you have this idea in Arabic grammar. Allah, a lot of the time, he'll say, for example, there's an ayah in my head, I can't remember it right now, but he mentions that they stayed for this much time. He says, or this much more. right? And he's confirming it means more,
It's
right?
kind of the let alone kind of thing.
Yeah,
It's like-
exactly. It's like let alone, right? He's
Yeah,
saying
yeah,
rather,
English,
like
rather.
even
more
more than
so.
that, even more
It's
than
an
so.
emphasis.
It's
term,
emphasis.
yeah.
So that's the Quran.
I see.
And Imam Sadiq confirming that the Quran is saying that Rasulullah was killed, right? And then they asked Imam Sadiq who killed him, and he said the two women killed him. The two
Interesting.
women, right? Now, obviously, we don't want to, cause any kind of, we're not here to do any sectarian
It's
business
out
or
there
anything
for
like
people
that,
to find, yeah.
right? We're speaking about in terms of the Shia ahadith, our corpus, in what is in our books, what our ulama believe, what has been written, right? And he mentions that the two women killed them upon the plotting of their two fathers, right? So we have that idea that, that Rasulullah was poisoned. And they have it in Bukhari as well, that Rasulullah was poisoned. But they say that he was poisoned by a Jewish woman at Khaybar, right? But which poison takes years to
say.
kill you?
So they do agree there was poisoning
Exactly.
linked to his death.
Yeah, exactly. They agree that the poisoning, there's poisoning, but it was from Khaybar years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
There is actually one more narration to this, and I think it sort of adds value to the points you've mentioned. Rasulullah himself sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Man mata minna ahl al-bayt amma masmuman or maqtula." Whoever dies from us, and who's us? Rasulullah himself.
Rasulullah himself and his Ahl Bayt.
Whoever dies from us is either killed or
He's
poisoned.
poisoned.
Yes.
Straight up. Bottom line. All the way from the beginning, including Sayyidah Fatima. Yeah.
Kulluna Muhammad. And there's some logic behind that. There's intelligence when you hear that hadith, and it probably means more than just in terms of actions and
100%.
isma. It's probably more than that,
100%.
and I've never thought of it like that as well.
Yeah,
But
that's
Amir
an interesting
al-Mu'mineen-
point.
Yeah, Amir al-Mu'mineen, the fact that Amir al-Mu'mineen was with the Holy Prophet at that time, and he was given that maqam of being the one who's doing the janazah and the burial of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, in itself is, so on one side, of course, you talk about the plotting and the mischief, you could argue, but the maqam of Amir al-Mu'mineen and being able to do the burial, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to allow someone who's not fit for that role to conduct such a role. And there's so many incidents, for example, when you talk about key life events in the life of the Holy Prophet Muhammad and the life of the A'immah alayhimus salam, the wedding of the Holy Prophet, Abu Talib alayhi salam. You talk about the birth of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the Holy Prophet was there. Like, there's key turning points where or either people were born or they died, or there's a birth or something, a funeral. You always had to have the highest of the highest there to conduct that ceremony or be present in that occasion. Do you see what I mean?
100%. As Shia, that's part and parcel of our belief.
Yeah.
Each of the imams, they're only buried and they're only
By
the previous imam.
Exactly.
Ma'asum that comes after. Only a Ma'asum, the one that comes after.
They're the only ones who burying the previous imam.
100%.
And if you are Shia, you follow the same logic, you follow the succession of the Holy Prophet as Amir al-Mu'mineen.
Sahih.
And it started from there. Amir al-Mu'mineen was there, and that's a huge point, because we talk about Ghadir and we talk about all these other things, Mubahila and all these various ahadith and stuff. But the status that Amir al-Mu'mineen had in doing that in itself was symbolic. We're talking about symbolism a lot. But I think there's a huge thing to play there.
These are the lives of Rasulullah, of Amir al-Mu'mineen, of Sayyidah Fatima. Every single moment in their life is significant.
Yes.
Right? That they are literally the enactors of Allah's plan on earth. Right? Every single moment in their lives is significant. And it takes any logical thinking Muslim to realize that, right? If Rasulullah has just passed away, or he has been martyred rather, who is there to bury him? That is a solid question you should be asking, right? Everybody should be thinking that. Why were the top companions that we believe that are the top companions of Rasulullah, why were they not there?
The immediate priority, if God forbid, the head of a tribe or the head of a family, a grandfather passes away, you're not immediately thinking about the inheritance of his land in Iraq and Pakistan. No, let that wait for a couple of days. Just anyone who's had a death in the family will know this. Everything, time stops for a minute, and you just focus on what you can do for the marhum.
In fact, if anyone mentions inheritance at that moment, you will face beef.
You will
face beef from the son, from the whole family. They will be on you.
And this is the normal families.
This is the normal family.
The family of Rasulullah.
Subhanallah.
Wallah, they went for so much oppression, man.
There must have been a reason as well. Like a lot of people would have said, no, there was important matters to be had. Look, you're talking about the largest religion, one of the fastest growing empires in the world, you know, and things had to be decided. People would argue, no, there would have been anarchy and chaos had the leadership not been decided at that moment. So what can we say as a response to that? Because someone might say, like I said, if you waited a 3-day period and you said, no, the Holy Prophet, let's focus on his janazah for 3 days, and like we'll deal with it after, people would say, no, there'll be chaos.
Yeah, or they could just follow what Rasulullah said at Ghadir and there wouldn't be any chaos.
Right.
How about that?
Right.
You know, you know, obviously as Shia, at that point, that's where we're going to take the discussion, obviously. We're going to say, okay, you're saying that Rasulullah, he left the world without choosing a leader. Rasulullah would let Islam be in chaos for 3 days or 4 days after he's been buried. Like, it doesn't make sense. Rasulullah has left Islam without anything.
When you go on work on annual leave, you're put out of office and you'll you contact my colleague. And we're normal human beings on low-level responsibilities.
Oh, and they say, you know, even way before Rasulullah left this world, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even like when he done the farewell Hajj, known as the farewell Hajj, his first and only Hajj, if I'm not mistaken. Here.
Yes.
He would come back and he would actually deliver sermons telling them, you know, I'm leaving this world soon. So whenever he spoke or gave sermons, it was all like advisory to the ummah of what should happen. And I read something earlier on, and I do want to share it, which I found interesting. You know, you mentioned being Shia, this is where the conversation is going to go. Let's take 100%. Let's take it this way, innit? So it comes from the book of Hayat al-Qulub by
Al-Ahmadi.
Yes, and where he narrates, Shaykh al-Tabrasi, he says, when the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam returned from the farewell Hajj, he was informed that his end was near. So he used to regularly hold sermons with people and warn them of the mischiefs that were to follow after his death. Subhanallah. He used to command them not to disobey his instructions. He would emphasize that they don't abandon his sunnah and that they don't create innovations in his religion from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They should remain attached to his progeny, the Ahlul Bayt, and to be in their obedience, in their help, in their protection, in their following, and their following is an obligation. He used to say, "O people, I am going before you and you will meet me at the pool of Kawthar. Then I will ask you how you dealt with those two important things that I left amongst you, which is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Quran, and my progeny, the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Therefore, you should mind how you behave with them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has informed me that these two will not separate until they reach me at the pool of Kawthar. I am leaving these two among you, therefore you must not precede you should not precede my Ahlul Bayt in any matter, and do not separate from them. Do not fall short in fulfillment of their rights, or you would be destroyed. Destroyed.
You know what's crazy? Yeah, you know when you were just reading that and you mentioned the pond of Kawthar, 2 or 3 times, it's just come into my mind. There's a narration in Al-Bukhari where it mentions that Rasulullah, he's standing at the Hawd. He's standing at Al-Kawthar, right? And there are people with him that he knows and he considers to be his companions in this narration in Bukhari. And the angels take them and they start taking them to the hellfire. And Rasulullah says, Ya Allah, what's going on? Ha'ula ashabi. These are my companions. And then what does the malaika they say? Ya Rasulullah, you don't know what they did after you.
This is in Bukhari. What happened to all companions are
imagine
anyone
you see this, it explains this narration. You see this narration you said here that the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt, they remain together till the pond of Kawthar.
Yes.
Right? So it explains what did they do after you, Ya Rasulullah. It was that they left the Ahlul Bayt and the Quran together.
Because the Quran was sufficient enough.
Exactly, because the Quran was sufficient.
It makes logical sense, because if you're trying to decipher and kind of understand the knowledge of Rasulullah Muhammad, that will come from either what he said or from the book of Allah and the way he's interpreted that. And naturally speaking, the two pieces of knowledge and guidance you'll find, which can encapsulate the same knowledge that the Holy Prophet had, is in the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt. There's nothing new, there's nothing added or removed by following that.
And you know what? I spoke about this in Jummah nights again, Ghadir, when we had the episode, I spoke about the idea that Ghadir, one of the major points in it, was that after me, you want tafsir of the Quran?
Yes.
You're going to Ali bin Abi Talib.
That-
You're not going to anyone else.
Yeah. And that episode, for those who haven't heard it, is so important, and not just a Ghadiri vibe. It was just very important to understand that, because it's such a fundamental incident in our history. And even on days like this, we're talking about the Shahada of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We reference Ghadir, like you referenced Ghadir earlier, saying, and it's important because that's people say like, you're using this as an example to say that this was the time Amir al-Mu'mineen should have had the Khilafah when it wasn't ordained earlier by the Holy Prophet. But Ghadir, understanding Ghadir is so fundamental for this. So, and also the episode you mentioned earlier about the reason for Imam al-Hussein's pilgrimage, I think it was episode 5 or 6, if I'm not mistaken, Jumu'ah nights. Yeah. But these are episodes which we've got here. I'm just shouting out because it was a production we work hard on, isn't it? So,
Yeah, for real.
So, yeah.
We also had a leader episode as well. Let's push out.
Yeah, bro. Hey, come on, bro.
It's a collective team as well.
Alhamdulillah. All of us are working. All right, fine. Let's kind of progress a bit more in the last few minutes of the discussion.
Okay.
The death of Rasulullah Muhammad and the burial of Rasulullah Muhammad, was that the beginning of modern day Sunni and Shia Islam? Said.
I would say yeah. I would say, because if we use that time, as sensitive as some people may, take it when they listen to it, that's the time for me as a Muslim. Again, I'm a follower of the Ahl al-Bayt. As a Muslim, that's a turning point between haqq and batil for me. Because anyone can be Muslim. Look, if we look at history, bro, we had Yazid and Muawiyah believing and claiming to, rule in the name of Allah, RasulAllah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So it's easy to say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. But I think it becomes difficult to say Ashhadu anna Aliin waliyullah, because the truth is with Ali. If Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Aliun ma'al haqq wal haqqu ma'a Ali, why would you go anywhere else? Just if you take Rasulullah's words as gospel, and we say Rasulullah, whatever he utters is come directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If he says, Aliun ma'al haqq, wal haqqu ma'a Ali, and wherever you find the truth, you find Ali, why would you go anywhere else?
Yeah.
Anyone can be Muslim. You like someone, convert, get married to them, say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, but you're not saying Ashhadu anna Aliyan waliyullah. The moment you understand haqq, you understand the meaning of Ashhadu anna Aliyan waliyullah.
And look at what the Quran says about the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen, right? The Quran is saying, Ya ayyuha rasul, balligh ma unzila ilayka min rabbik, wa in lam taf'al, fama ballaghta risalata. Saying, oh my messenger, convey that which has been revealed to you from your Lord, and if you do not, it is as if you haven't conveyed the religion altogether.
Yeah.
It's as if you're on zero. You're on zero at the moment. Yeah, you haven't even come into the Rasul's time. Yeah. And then Allah, what does he say? Allah is going to protect you from the people. Inna Allah la yahdi al-qawm al-kafirin. Allah doesn't guide the disbelievers in this message.
Subhanallah.
I think this is where we, like, no offense to whoever listens, bro, it's not your eyes that are blind, it's the hearts. Honestly. Because you can read it and you can hear it and it's coming from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, but it's the heart that is blind. And you're telling me that this Quranic ayah is Allah, technically, he decides who he guides.
Yeah.
Khalas.
I think that was a turning point, of course, short term and long term. But till today, you still see the effects of it. Because as much as people deny it, people say Shiism started many years later.
Started by a Jew.
Talk about, what's his name? What's the guy's name?
Abdullah bin Saba.
Yeah.
Bin Saba. Yeah, I mean, there you hear all of these things. It's just really annoying.
We've got an episode about him coming on Jumu'ah nights.
Yeah, I know. It's really annoying. It's really, really annoying. But nonetheless, look, at the end of the day, everyone at the time of the death of the Holy Prophet believed in the same religion. Their initial differences were political. You could argue. Yeah, it wasn't theological. It wasn't fiqhi. It wasn't nothing like that.
It is now.
Right. Yeah. So now modern day Shiism and Sunnism has changed because of these differences. And of course, you had al-fiqh comes from the Aimah alayhim salam, and it starts from the Holy Prophet to Amir al-Mu'mineen, and it goes down this seerah, as we say. And of course, the Ja'fari school is what we are known as. Obviously, you have different scholars and in Hanafi and Maliki and Hanbali and Shafi and all of that kind of the different interpretations of an ahkam. But generally speaking, when we talk about Sunni and Shiism today,
Yeah.
The question which is the reason why I'm mentioning this is because there are people who will turn around and they will say, you guys don't honor the Prophet like we do. You'll honor your Imams, you'll honor the Ahlul Bayt, you'll honor Imam al-Hussein. And of course, look, it's a valid argument. Of course we honor the Ahlul Bayt. I mean, we've just done 8-10 episodes on Muharram and Arba'in, right? But to say that we don't honor Rasul is an insult. And in my opinion, to honor one is to honor the other. So what do we do and how do we respond to that?
Well, you know what, yeah? First of all, this is just coming to my mind, but this is like, experience talking, yeah? Anybody that thinks that Shia don't honor Rasulullah, come to MCE on the Mawlid of Rasulullah. Come to Muslim community of Essex. See how Sheikh Ayub is popping it off on the Mawlid of Rasulullah. Yeah,
so good.
Yeah, on a real, like that is a top event of the year. But with regards to the honoring of Rasulullah, how can we as Muslims honor Rasulullah? Is by honoring his what he's left for us, right? Yeah. That is the biggest honoring of Rasulullah. When we look at the religion, we have Allah, we have the Rasul, and then we have the Wali, right? We have Amir Mu'mineen, right? When people say, we don't honor Rasulullah, you could say, we don't honor, for example, we could say we don't honor Allah, right? We don't say, for example, we don't praise Allah enough or whatever, right? But the reason that is, or Allah is not spoken about so much, or it's not a differing factor, right? Sunnis and Shia, they don't disagree about Allah. They don't disagree about the Prophet. Yeah, but when we speak about Amir Mu'mineen, it is the teachings of Rasulullah that we're trying to protect, right? It's Amir Mu'mineen that protected the teachings of Rasulullah. So it is important that we focus on the Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salatu wasalam and their safeguarding of the religion of Rasulullah, who is their master and their Sayyid and is greater than all of them. Yeah. Right?
I mean, it's common sense. Like if you have a teacher and the best way you can, if you really respect your teacher, you can praise him. The best thing you do is you use what he's taught you and implement it into your life on a grander scale. But yeah, of course, honoring Rasul is to follow word for word what he's told us to do and follow in our
and who else can you get that from other than that?
Right, and the interpretation of it
exactly
as well.
And that word for word is if forget this whole Sunni Shia thing, bro. If you're a Muslim, you would hold on to the Thaqalain.
Ahsant.
Kitab Allah wa atrati ahli
and that is also in all of the books.
And he didn't even...
Before we wrap up, interesting thing, I think important thing to say, because obviously we've been talking now for about 40 odd minutes, if my timing is correct. A lot of what we've said can A, be seen as controversial, B, be seen as people who are not scholars and qualified. The second is definitely correct. So as speaking for myself, I'm definitely not educated or qualified in this. I am just a student and I'm interested in this. And to be honest, I think like a majority of us, as we are and should be, on a path of knowledge and pursuit of knowledge. So just an encouraging word for everyone at home who's listening or watching. Go out, do your own research, speak to scholars, ask the questions. This is a school of thought which encourages critical thinking. Like we said a few weeks ago with Brother Mohamed Ali Muraj. Go out, ask your questions, you'll find your answers. Because it's there in our books and in other books as well. And there's nothing for us to be shy away from, to be really honest. In terms of the controversy side, as I mentioned earlier, at least from my part, and I know I'm speaking on behalf of you guys as well, no harm intended, no bad feelings intended.
100%.
It's all love. We have listeners, mashallah, from various backgrounds. In fact, yesterday I was at a majlis and I met an uncle, actually, an elderly uncle from who's not, it's Ashari basically, and he said to me, I watched the podcast and I enjoy it. So I just want to thank everyone who takes the time out to engage and to learn whether or not you are a 12 Shia. I mean, this is, yes, we are a Shia podcast and we're proud of it, but we're a podcast which encourages dialogue and that discussion with anyone and everyone. 100%. We're not going to exclude or make anyone feel kind of out of place. So
no, I echo that, Ahmed, and I think it's important that we also mention, a little about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is that Rasulullah, bro, he's the prophet for mankind.
Yes.
Yani, as much as, we say we are on Sirat al-Mustaqim, inshallah we are, and I know we are. But a lot of you claim that as well, from all schools of thought. And if we really believe we are on Sirat al-Mustaqim, we have to understand who Rasulullah is. Yani we know Rasulullah, he's the best of creation.
Yeah.
We know Rasulullah, you know, had the makaram al-akhlaq, you know, he had the best of, you know, character and everything. And he was sent as a mercy to mankind.
Yeah.
So sometimes if we stay away from polemics, if we try to, as you said, you know, we encourage dialogue and things, bro, if there's one thing that can unite us, is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Yeah,
if we understand him
100%.
and understand his infallibility, his asma, his wisdom, his teachings and his sunnah and everything correctly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inshallah will be pleased with us.
Yeah.
That's our aim. At the end of the day, this dunya is a bridge for us to reach the next world. And who do we hold on to? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and his teachings. His pure teachings, his pristine teachings. Inshallah, it's with the school of the Ahlul Bayt.
Inshallah.
100%.
Yeah. Guys, drop comments below. Hit that subscribe button so we know how you feel, any questions you have. And tomorrow, probably in about 21 hours, depending on Sayyid Mustafa, Jama'ah Nights will be airing. So hit that notification bell and then you'll hear tomorrow, inshallah, when the next episode is out. Mo, thank you so much.
Bro, thank you for having me, man. I'm glad to be back.
This is your brand.
It's true. It's true. We are.
By the way, both of you are named after Rasulullah. Muhammad, Allahumma ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad
Muhammad.
And that group can never be complete without
Ali.
Ali.
Mashallah. Mashallah.
Well, the names are so important.
Yeah,
names are so important.
Never ever we should ever let these names go.
And speaking about names and speaking about Rasulullah, till now, I know in the UK, I don't know about globally in Europe and stuff. But in the UK, every single year, go look it up, man. Muhammad, the name Muhammad is the most popular male name in the UK.
Bro, but you've got these like new era spaceship names. Like, you know what I'm saying?
With these exclamation marks.
Exclamation marks. And but on a level, like, okay, I get it. Like, there's some nice names, funky names, creative names. Like, some people that are getting... So I get it. Like, someone said to me, it's like, bro, I know too many Abbas Alis. I know too many Mohamed Abbases. I know too many
people are getting. I get that. You know, it's getting trendy now with new names and stuff. Yeah, people are moving away.
Some names can't, but some names can. The whole point is, bro, there's a reason why they're overused. It's because they're meant to be.
Bro,
overused.
Look at Imam Al Hussein, bro. All my sons, Ali. Ali.
It reminds me of a scenario I was in once. I'll say this before we end. We were at a gathering, and the person we were with, you know, he's not Muslim.
Yeah.
But everyone else that was there was Muslim. Zian. So you just imagine there's like 30 people.
Oh.
So I'm gonna call this guy, I don't want to mention his name, I'm gonna call him Mike for purposes.
Okay.
So Mike comes to this gathering and he's with me. And we're sitting down and I'm sitting with everyone that I know and he doesn't know anyone.
Yeah.
So now he's looking for me. He's like, Ali. Everyone turns around. He got so confused.
Oh my god!
How are you all called Ali? Allah al-Azim. Yeah, that was just it gave me some flashbacks of this.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. No, it's cool. It's nice. It's nice. And obviously, the best football player in the world is also called Muhammad. So it's a nice way to
get out of here, man.
Big shout out. Brothers and sisters, again, thank you so much for tuning in as always. And listen, remember us in your du'as in these last few nights. Of course, these are holy nights, and especially in the last few nights of Safar before we kind of enter season 3 as well, which is a couple of weeks away. We're going to have a few more discussions, really exciting discussions with some very, very exciting speakers, scholars, guests from locally and afar. So stay tuned. On both the podcast and on Jumu'ah nights, and we will be back next week with our usual episode. We'll see you then. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.